Welcome to Building Wealthy Habits. This is a podcast featuring me, Randy Barkley, along with our team, Jeremiah Lee and Laura Lee.
On this podcast, we share financial advice from our team of certified financial planners, which include a California licensed attorney, myself, an MBA professional, and a collective experience of over 40 years. On this episode, Laura Lee, Randy Barkley, and myself, Jeremiah Lee, we talk about financial planning for engineers. Engineers are a unique breed that usually have questions, they have ideas, and this is all, of course, some stereotypes, but they have questions. So we're going to talk through how you get your questions answered, those real questions that matter to you. And we're going to talk a little bit about the software that we use that allows access to some really great information, as well as charts, graphs, things that will expose the real numbers. And we end with a discussion about if you're married to an engineer, what it looks like to be a married couple going through your finances together, but maybe having different mindsets or approaches. So stay tuned for this episode.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to start us off today by apologizing for a little bit of a cold that I have left over. And
I've got residual too.
I think it's just that time of year. And then I saw this meme on my Instagram and it said, I used to think that I had a great immune system, but then I realized I was not immune to a 5-year-old sneezing directly in my face. And
hey, that's accurate.
I know Instagram nailed it. That is exactly my life right now. I'm pretty sure my 5-year-old sneezed or coughed. We also were on a road trip recently, so we were in a confined space.
With all of them.
Together.
Well, I like that today we're kind of pilots and we all have these headphones. We're remote in today. And so it's a good different feel. But I feel like we could be flying planes or something.
Right. We're just changing things up. I like it too. Dad, what do you think? Do you like this setting?
Again, it's okay. I think it's interesting. It's just interesting. How do I say? I don't know.
As a gamer, you're in. I like it.
Well, let's just
jump in and do it.
Let's just see how it goes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, speaking of trying new things, Jeremiah and we went to a conference this last weekend. It was a 2-day conference. It was called Fusion, and it was a marriage conference actually it was like a 2.5-day conference. And I haven't attended a marriage conference in the past. Have you, Dad? Have you done a marriage conference before?
I have. It's been, I think, even before you were born.
Oh, my.
So
that wasn't too long ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was interesting. I mentioned I think it was to Jeremiah. They touch emotional buttons sometimes. That at least that's my experience. That I'm not sure. It's almost like you have to build up these feelings, and for a man, that may be a little bit more difficult than it would be for my lovely wife. But anyway, it was all good. It was positive.
Well, and some of that I think is getting the depths of someone and really expressing things. Some of that is the emotional manipulation in the moment. But yeah, a key reason that we did it, one, just continuing working on our marriage. But even as financial planners, when we look forward for people as they're planning out their lives, divorce is a major destruction of wealth. Not only just a personal issue and difficult season, but it derails so many plans. And with our clients, a lot of times we'll tell them the number one piece of financial advice is date night. Like you need to stay connected to your spouse as you together are building your future. And this was just a weekend for us to dive into conversations that we haven't had or never had a chance to finish.
Right. I was going to say didn't have a chance to finish. That was really the luxury. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was great. It was a great moment to dive into some of those things where we're doing great, where we're really struggling, where we could do better. I mean, all those are just good to kind of be on the same page.
Yeah. I think it all has real good value. I think it's just a matter of being consistent and caring for one another. And oftentimes when you get people that are type A or drivers or such as that, all of a sudden they wake up and they find out, oh, I actually am married. And this person I'm married to is really an important part of my life. And they find out that there's a gap that's been created that could either cause, like you're talking about, Jeremiah, divorce, or it really is hard to recover.
Yeah,
It's too
that's right.
long.
Randy, how many years have you been married?
It will be 51 in June.
51 in
51
June.
years.
That's
It's
great.
I have to tell you, it's a blink of an eye and it's a click of a finger.
Hmm.
It's amazing how much stuff goes by and you want to recapture. But it's been a wonderful ride so far. So I'm hoping it keeps going.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm ever
We,
so grateful for those 51 years. How long have we been married for now?
so we finished 15. I think we're working on 16.
16.
In
Yep.
16 in progress. Yeah.
Yep. Well, and the irony you said about you can wake up and find a gap, Dad. So this marriage workshop was called Fusion, but the group that puts it on, they're called the Gap Community.
Really?
So for our
Okay.
listeners who might be interested in looking it up, I would recommend this program. And you're right; it's sort of it's expository. The way that they lay out the content. I was talking with a friend of mine who also attended the conference who our personality types, we want to know the agenda from the very beginning. Like, where are you guiding me? You can't help but feel a little bit like you're being manipulated because they walk you through a little bit of a roller coaster to try to evoke some of these responses that are maybe like a little bit buried. But we were along for the ride, and I would say that it was. Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. I think it was
Yeah.
worthwhile. And again, it's just a measure in trying to be intentional about your marriage, because we're in a season where I think it's just not too often that we get to finish a thought or finish a conversation. So that was a
Yeah.
gift.
Sure.
I mean, young kids, business, all those things, like they detract or they distract, I guess, from
Yep.
from what we're doing. So
Well,
great.
that's a whole nother podcast topic, right? Is how to do business as a married couple. So we need a little bit more road under our feet, and then maybe we'll be
Try
able
that
to-
one.
But let's go ahead and dive into the topic at hand. So today, we're actually kicking off a series that we're going to do where we're going to talk about financial planning for very specific professions, because even though the planning process is very similar across the board, there are some ways that we approach communicating the information, sharing the information, answering questions, etc., if we have some insight into that person's professional background. So we're going to talk about some common characteristics of financial planning for engineers. And here's my disclaimer before we get started, is that we're going to talk about some common characteristics. We're going to talk about some stereotypes, but certainly we are aware of the fact that there are engineers with all different types of personalities and characteristics. So these are just some broad stereotypes, some things that we've experienced from our clients, but this is not meant to put anybody in a box. We know there's lots of different types of engineers.
Yeah,
That's
I think
great.
that it's common, in our practice. I've been in the business for a long time, and I know talking to other financial planners, other wealth managers, that whenever they get a prospect that's an engineer, everybody kind of rolls their eyes, thinking, "Oh my goodness," because they want detail, they want the numbers, they want to be very analytical, and most planners feel like that's an obstacle that they have to kind of work through. I never looked at it that way. I always enjoyed getting down into the weeds and responding to people in those areas, because that's part of their personality. It's what they want to know,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, and that's great. I right with you, Randy. I love it when people have questions, and maybe it's the attorney side of me that wants to get into all the nuts and bolts of the details. But when someone asks a penetrating question, it's like, yes, that's the right question. Like, that's a hard one to answer, but you have asked the right question to really understand what we're trying to do. And I think for us, I think engineers, may have a lot of questions. The meetings may take a little longer. However, I also feel that they're some of the most satisfied and long-standing clients that we have,
We do, yeah.
because we've got through the details and they're able to get that level of trust, of comfort, knowing they have an ally. They're not being sold. They're not being tricked. They're not being, but saying, no, if there's an issue here, absolutely, let's look at it. Let's rip it open. Let's get in there. Let's make sure everything is working for you and their finances as they want it to. And I mean, some of the common characteristics that I see is that they're problem solvers. So when they see a problem, they want to dive into it. Generally highly intelligent, they get it. And even though personal finance may not be what they're trained in, they're very bright and they're very capable, and they ask great questions. And that analytical mind, we have one client who keeps his own spreadsheets, and he downloads the things that we do, and he goes through them because that's what makes sense to him. That's how he can see the world clearly when he gets into a spreadsheet. We have other clients who they want the graphs, so we'll provide a bunch of different graphs and charts to show them, any question they have, kind of how things are moving forward. But that analytical idea is very dynamic, I think, in the meeting.
Right.
Right. I would say that one of the things that I appreciate is that generally speaking, they're really not afraid of the numbers or the math. We've got clients along the whole spectrum. Some people that have moved into an industry or a profession where they use math on a regular basis, but other people that maybe after school, they didn't really have to deal with a lot of equations or math. And so the topic of standard deviation or, a percentage bell curve,
they're
graphs.
right in there with you. Yep.
Yeah, like the in this case for engineers, I think they really appreciate, like you said, Jeremiah, kind of getting into the nuts and bolts. But I love it that these questions are great ways to expose the actual work that we do as investment managers and
Right.
the reason, like what the idea behind a target rate of return is, et cetera. So typically they don't shy away from the numbers. In fact, I think they gravitate towards the numbers. They really appreciate us utilizing graphs and talking about the, formulaic approach that we can take to investment work.
And one other thing that I see on a regular basis is when new clients come in that are engineers, often they're managing their own investments. They're doing it themselves. And for some, they enjoy that. They like that. And it's kind of a process for them to trust what we're doing. And, others are just tired of doing it. They had some good ideas. They generally know what is going on, but they don't have the time for the analysis to really feel that they're doing the right job for their investments. And so that's when they're coming over to really have us come into that. But it's more of a transition, I find, with engineers because they have some sort of developed experience with managing their own investments. And now as they're handing that over, there needs to be the appropriate level of questions, of understanding, of trust. And all that takes a little bit of time. And that's okay. I mean, that's part of that process of, often we'll have a client, the first 2 or 3 meetings will be the first couple of months to show them this is what we've done so far. This is why we're doing it. And once they get that comfort level, it becomes a wonderful relief for them versus having to have this real tight hold on it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of engineer types are analytical people. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. They feel like they can control the outcome. And so the more knowledge they have and the more hands-on control that they provide to the process, they can have a outcome that is satisfactory. What most engineers find, or most analytical people find, is that when you come to investing, finance is different than building a building. It just is different. There's a lot of emotional aspects to building a proper portfolio and managing that portfolio. And when you make decisions about when you buy or sell or hold or whatever, and it's not easy for analytical people to give over that aspect of the structure. And it's just not easy for them to do because they're trained, we should be able to get a better outcome. And so they dive into it. And what I've really been able to express with clients is that finance is different. The economies move differently than, you can't just always predict this is what's going to happen. You do this and you're going to get that. That doesn't always work that way. So you have to be very careful how you structure and how you manage those kinds of things.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, right. They're problem solvers, right? So they want clear inputs and clear outputs, and the economy and obviously the market has so many various indicators that I think, we have several clients that, like you said, Jeremiah, have already managed their own investments, and maybe they've enjoyed that. Maybe they've had some great returns, and maybe the flip side has happened where they didn't get the outcome that they were expecting. Right. And so they arrive to us with a variety of different mindsets regarding investment work.
Yeah. And a good comment in that moment is there is a mindset shift that is really healthy for engineers, is to go from saying, I need to beat the market, I need to do better than the vast people out there, and saying, I need my finances to provide the life that I'm looking for. Right. And so there's going to be a really healthy shift to say, hey, the market got 12% or negative 4%, and I just need to do better than that, versus saying, my life requires that I get at least 7% return, and I got 9%. Mm-hmm. I don't really care what the market did. I don't really care what anything else did. I'm investing for the sake of my future. And if they can take that mindset that, as you said, the problem to be solved it's much easier than constantly holding themselves to an idea. I just need to beat the market, or I need to see the next bubble coming and avoid it, or that these very, very difficult tasks that are market driven versus looking at their own life, their own spouse, their own future, and we help them set a plan and a vision for that, and then the investments become one more input into their life rather than the gear that everything is dependent on. And that's a really healthy mindset for someone who's an engineer.
Right, because more than likely, if their goal is to beat the benchmark, then they have most likely taken on more risk than was necessary in order to arrive. And if they were successful, there's no guarantees that they'll continue to be successful in that route. So I like that comment about kind of shifting the goal about where they're headed.
Well, I think also the engineers are by nature competitive. They want to know what the answer is, so they'll work hard to get to the answer. And what we have to stress to our clients that are in that particular structure is that there is a host of people we deal with, and investing is a very competitive business. We have a lot of different people that we work with, but their education is superlative. They come from the best institutions, and they are extremely competitive with each other. They are working for an outcome. And for somebody who feels that they can go into that realm, so to speak, and outperform, it's a rarity. It is a rarity. First of all, these people, the people we work with, from the moment they're awake until the moment they go to sleep, they are thinking about investments. They're doing continual analysis and do comparative structures. And to think that you can compete with that and come out on top, it's a rarity. It just doesn't work. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we kind of shift into, there's no, when we sit down to talk to our clients about their financial plan, we use similar software across the board. But I'm just going to highlight some of the ways that we might pull out different information or present it in a way that resonates a little bit differently with our engineer clients. And so I just want to talk about two platforms that we use most often when we're sitting down talking about someone's financial plan. One is E-Money, and that presents a lot of different reports, cash flows, graphs. The other part of E-Money that I find really powerful is you can input variables. And so you can literally trigger these variables or turn them off and see immediately the impact on the long-term projections for a specific plan that we're building.
What variables would be important to be putting in there, right?
Right, exactly. And those are somewhat client specific, but there are some ones that we use basically on a repeat basis. We look at expense scenarios. What if your lifestyle started to creep up by 10%? What does that look like over time? What if your expenses start to creep up by 20%? We put in some long-term care events as a kind of pressure test the portfolio, especially towards the end of their lives. We assume towards the end of their life, some long-term care events, variety of different variables. Those are some of the common ones, but most of the time the clients kind of dictate, well, what if I retire at this age versus retiring at this age, or et cetera.
Yeah. Right. And I love it in this moment when we've built the plan, we've built in a few scenarios, we start walking through them, and the clients, their eyes light up and they say, okay, what if I retire it, and you can see them getting into this, and it's almost like this new toy that like tells them what their future looks like, right? It's to say, if I retire at 58, well, that means, man, we're really going to struggle in retirement. But if I work till 64, oh, okay, look, and you can see the wheels start turning. And that's one of my favorite moments, especially with engineers, is then now they have a system, right? They have a toy to play with. So then they want to start building this. And we do that in the meeting there. We also, as we go forward in that relationship, we narrow down all the different scenarios to the ones that are realistic. You're not going to work till you're 90. You're not going to retire at 50 or whatever it may be.
I'm going to work till I'm 90.
There you go. And I'm sure someone out there is going to retire at 50, right? But we narrow them down to something that is realistic for their life, so they can really sit there and kind of ruminate in that and say, yeah, I'm excited about this. We could do this, and have both spouses kind of tied in. So that software is one of my favorites, and that's my favorite moment, is when we start playing with the scenarios that really get someone excited about their future.
Yep. We can talk about standard deviation. we can talk about one of my favorites actually is the Monte Carlo analysis. I think where it really looks at a variety of different outcomes and some averages. So how likely are you to hit the target rate of return, and with what range of outcomes that exist within that I guess target rate of both return and the risk that the portfolio is assuming. So
Yeah, and because we don't live in a mathematical model, right? It's not just my spreadsheet says it's fine, so it's fine. We want to stress test every single plan because this is people's lives. They're going to make real choices based on this output, and so just as you said, we'll test. Well, what if the market just is a little softer? What if your expenses are a little more? And some of those are what ifs that we build in. Some of those are just our system pressure testing it and saying, okay, here's the probability you're going to get to where you want. And the standard deviation is a great one. We get people that are more math based. We look at the risk in the profile in the portfolio and really can dive deep into that. And I'd say half of our clients, they're not interested in that conversation. The other half want to hear a little bit of it, but really it's the engineers, the ones who really want to dive into that conversation and understand it more. So
another one that I feel like you use a lot, Dad, is Orion. We all use it, but I think you like to spend a lot of time in Orion. What do you like to do in that one?
Well, it's a very powerful software that can take the rate of return and its net return, so we can show how the holdings, depending upon what the allocations are, and it shows not only what the return is, like for example, right now we're working on year to date, but you can go back year after year after year and see what you did, not only isolate to that year, but also cumulative, and look at a rate of return. I mean, so oftentimes people come in and they say, if they're analytical, we're talking about engineers, they say, well, my rate of return has been, I'll say, has it? I mean, have you really gone back and analyzed how much you invested initially? Did you take any withdrawals from it? And what is your return right now?
Yeah.
And they go, oh, you want that detail? Well, it's important. It's important to know if you started with X, you now have Y. What is Y worth, and what is the rate of return on Y? And oftentimes, what I find is most people are way underperforming in actuality versus what they think they're performing at, right?
Yeah. And we want to expose all that. I mean, I had a client actually just this last week that came in with all the paper statements, and they've been trying to track through their own performance. And what they're getting from the custodian is these just paper statements. And they say, I'm really having a hard time, calculating all these things. So we pull up Orion, in the meeting and show them their accounts. And instantly we're here's the standard deviation from this point to this point. Here's the return from this date to this date. And we could dive right into all those details. And to me, that's so valuable. Like all that information shouldn't be hidden, shouldn't be difficult to see.
Transparent.
Right?
Absolutely.
We should get, and this software, the reason we pay for it and we use Orion is because it provides that easy access to the key information without having to pull out a calculator and a piece of paper and trying to add up all the different numbers from your various statements. And anyone who's an engineer who's struggling with that, of saying, hey, I get these statements, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. Like, you don't have to live in that world. Like, there is so many great technology. We use Orion, but that jumps you directly into the finances to answer the real questions. What did I really make from June to June? What did I make from July to July? And how much that was the money I put in? How much that was growth? All those questions are super simple in this software.
I was going to comment.
Bottom line is that at the end of the day, you're going to have to live. You're accumulating, but now all of a sudden you're going to be entering into a stage in your life where you're going to have to decumulate. In other words, you're going to have to live off of these assets, and you better know what the performance is realistically, or you're going to be surprised, right?
Yep.
Right. And I was just going to end on the Orion. I was just going to comment on, I think it's a powerful software to expose tax loss harvesting, which is a main principle that we use in investment management. I mean, it breaks down your realized and your unrealized gain, your losses. And so we have a chance, especially at this time of year, to talk to people about the tax implications of the gains that they've seen in their account. We like being in that position where we're talking about gains in the account. So that and like you said, returns over time. So we can do a year to date. You can do a rolling 3-year. There's a lot of really powerful reports that you can run almost instantaneously. But okay, we got to wrap up our time. We've actually talked about a lot when it comes to planning for engineers, but to kind of pull this full circle, we started talking about a marriage conference. I don't want to forget about the spouse. If
Or
engineers
the
come
spouse
in,
that's not involved with the investing work or the financial planning side of it, right?
yeah, or the non-engineer spouse. You probably know how your spouse's mind works. Some of these characteristics might have resonated with you. You might have a lot of head nods. But if you are married to an engineer and that is not how your brain works, part of our goal as financial planners are to talk to both parts of the relationship or the household. And so we want to be able to answer questions in a way that makes sense and to both, in terms of how they process information and analyze different things. And so we want to invite those who are married to engineers to still participate in the meetings and allow
Yeah.
your spouse to ask all the detailed analytical questions and then save space to ask your questions,
Right.
because we want to answer those too. And Dad, I think you had specifically a kind of a testimonial of a client that you worked with.
Well, again, we've gained a lot of clients over the years, and immediately you know somebody who is controlling, who is an engineer type, and such as that. And my question to them is, and oftentimes I would look at them and I'll say, okay, now you just died. What does your spouse do? Where does that person go? And they look at me and go, well, I don't know. And there's fear that comes over the face of the other spouse, right? In most cases, it's a wife, but not always. And I ask the question, what's going to happen? And they go, oh, I see where you're getting. And so what we do is we build a relationship, not to control it, but to make sure we fully understand what's going on. And then we help them work through that. We're not taking away the controls from them, but more importantly, if that person gets sick or dies or whatever happens, they know they've given a handoff to our office and to the advisor to help the spouse. And that's
Yeah.
an important relay.
It really is. And I think the other piece when you think about married couple is that there's times I've had a lot of spouses tend to be the engineering spouse who feels the responsibility of getting this right. This is the money we've saved. I'm the one in charge of investing it. I have to get this right. And I have spreadsheets, I have things, but I'm just not confident that we can retire. And they need an ally. They need someone to come alongside them to say, yeah, let me help you with these calculations. Let me help you with the perspective. Let's plan out your future. And to make sure that you, as the engineer, have an ally to come alongside you. And then as the spouse who's not the engineer, that you have someone who will answer all your questions, and not the way that your spouse might as the engineer, but that values them, holds space for that, and that you can both be confident in your future.
Absolutely. And so that wraps up our time for this week. Join us next week. We're going to talk about planning for another profession. Drum roll, please. We'll reveal that on next week's episode. So thanks so much for listening.
Boom.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who are closest to you. We have more resources online as well. They're designed to help you share this information easily with the people in your life. To access them, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they would have talked to us sooner. If that's you, we would be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or just click the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. Look, we love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful for your life.
And always remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.
Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.